Fantasy season is here, so just like the last few weeks with running backs and wide receivers, this week we're talking tight ends.
Perfect.
The cherry on top of a fantasy championship squad, the guys who get down and do the dirty work but still put up those points week after week onto your championship winning squad. Guys like Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, Mark Andrews, George Kittle, just a few of the big names around the league. These are the guys that are the cherries on top of your fantasy squad. These are the guys that are bringing it every week and are just that little dash, that little pizzazz to help inch you across the finish line of victory every single week, pushing you towards the playoffs. So here are some of my sleeper picks, the later round guys that you can get with some tremendous value and high upside that might very well take you to your fantasy playoffs this year and beyond. Starting things off with Robert Tonyan of the Green Bay Packers. Now, a very unassuming pick to start off the list. He's going maybe rounds 14, 15, or maybe even undrafted, depending on your draft formats. However, I think Robert Tonyan might very well be a great backup tight end receiving option for you this upcoming season with a lot of potential, as the Green Bay Packers offense, especially in the receiving game, got a whole lot worse this offseason with the departures of Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Devontae Adams respectively. The only major returning outside receiving option going to be Allen Lazard, and with a number of very young wide receivers or even draft picks this year, I think one of the mainstay targets that has remained is going to be, of course, Robert Tonyan. There's nobody really competing with him for that starting tight end role, so Tonyan is going to be a familiar target for quarterback Aaron Rodgers. I think he's going to see a huge benefit from the void of targets last year in a passing game that is, again, just really youthful at the moment. They're going to be leaning a lot more towards the line of scrimmage. They're going to be leaning a lot more on their running game this upcoming season. I think Aaron Rodgers is still going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the entire NFL. And who else is going to be receiving passes from him this year? None other than Robert Tonyan. I think he has a huge amount of upside going into this season. I think he's a very easy stash pick, maybe very late in your draft. And if you're not really sure what to do, maybe round 14, 15, you're looking for some added depth, I think Robert Tonyan might very well be worth rostering with a high potential upside. Next tight end up, it's going to be Mike Gesicki of the Miami Dolphins. Now, inversely, the Miami Dolphins receiving core got a whole lot better this offseason with the addition of Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle looking like a very solid, established piece within this receiving core, new offensive-minded head coach in Mike McDaniel. I think Mike Gesicki is going to play a very similar role to George Kittle, going to be a very consistent contributor, honestly, within the passing game, but going to be a huge red zone threat with a lot of potential for, honestly, just easy yak potential. And what I mean by this is your defenses, your opposition is going to be so focused on the outside receivers in Waddle and Hill. I think Gesicki is going to clean up really nicely as that receiving option number 3 in this offense that still doesn't quite have a solidified backfield. So Tua Tagovailoa is going to have 3 very solid receiving options, and even being the number 3 in that offense, I think is going to still be some very steady point production. If you like to hold off on tight ends until your later rounds, you like to focus elsewhere like running back and even wide receiver, I think Mike Gesicki can very well find his way maybe even into your starting lineup this season. I think he's been a very productive tight end over the last few years, and Gesicki has very high potential this year as well. Next up, it's going to be Hunter Henry of the New England Patriots. Now, I haven't talked very spirited about the New England Patriots in fantasy football terms, at least, going into this season. And even as a football fan, I'm not exactly super high on the Patriots going into this season, just in general. However, when it comes to fantasy football, last year, one of the top 10 receiving tight ends, one of the top 10 touchdown receiving leaders in the entire NFL last year was Hunter Henry. I think he still has a great shot of being, well, honestly, the best receiving option within the Patriots offense this upcoming season. Over 50 catches last year, 9 touchdowns through the air. I think he and Mac Jones have a lot of very good chemistry. Hunter Henry, one of the more steady, stable tight ends throughout the entire NFL. He's going to be a very solid receiving option. Last year, I rostered him on my fantasy football team, and I think he got me within a pretty consistent range of about 10 to 12 points almost every week. So if you're looking for just a consistent tight end, a certain level of reliability, I think Hunter Henry is easily the way to go. Not a lot of inspiration elsewhere throughout the Patriots offense, maybe a Jacoby Myers, but the running game isn't necessarily what I'm looking for. The receiving options I'm not necessarily super sold on. However, I've even mentioned and thumbnailed Hunter Henry earlier this offseason. I think Hunter Henry is still a sleeper tight end on this list. He's going to go in a lot of your later rounds, maybe even round 12 to 14. So Hunter Henry, very much so worth your time and worth being on your roster. Next man up, it's going to be Dawson Knox of the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills have an incredibly high octane offense. Honestly, their entire roster is high octane. Their punting game's great, their kicking game's great, their defense got better, their offense, honestly, still incredibly youthful and has a lot of awesome talent on the roster. It even got better this offseason as well. So the running game got a little bit better. The receiving game, I lost Emmanuel Sanders, but I think Gabriel Davis is going to slide into that number 2 role. However, the number 3 receiving option on this team very well could be Dawson Knox heading into this season. I think he's going to find himself packaged into a lot of potentially wide open receiving plays. There was also a great stretch last year where Dawson Knox was just cleaning up touchdown after touchdown after touchdown last season, just putting fantasy owners and opponents on notice if you decided to actually start him last year. I think this year you're probably going to see him be at least a little bit more involved in the offense as they try to get some of their younger guys a little bit more involved. Last year, numbers-wise, was very comparable to a guy I just mentioned in Hunter Henry. So Dawson Knox absolutely deserves some respect going into this NFL season. I think he's probably going to be drafted between rounds 11 through maybe 13. I think he could very well find himself into your starting lineup. There's a lot of stock being thrown at the Buffalo Bills offense this year, even minus Brian Dable. Josh Allen is an absolute lightning bolt at the quarterback position, and everything it seems that he touches around him, Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, etc., seems to be solid gold. So I'm buying into Dawson Knox this season. Am I relying on him as my absolute number 1? I think it's still a little bit up in the air. If you can maybe get your hands on a better tight end, maybe Dawson Knox is your number 2. I think it's a really solid number 2, maybe even a flex option, really depending on your situation. But Dawson Knox has a lot of potential this upcoming season. I think he's absolutely worth rostering. And the final tight end on my list is going to be Dalton Schultz from the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys receiving options this season are really interesting if you break it down. And I think Dalton Schultz has a huge amount of potential to put up a lot of fantasy points for you. I mean, looking around the rest of this receiving core, you've already got CeeDee Lamb, who's their number 1 wide receiver, absolutely, this upcoming season. But then they've already traded away Amari Cooper. They've already seen James Washington get hurt. Now they're going to have a rookie wide receiver, very likely at the number 2 receiver role. So I think Dalton Schultz has a huge opportunity to blossom into a starting caliber tight end this upcoming season. He's still being drafted between rounds, maybe like 8 to 10. If you're looking for a tight end a little bit later down the road, Dalton Schultz could absolutely be your guy this upcoming season. He has a huge opportunity to be maybe even the number 2 wide receiver receiving option in this entire Dallas Cowboys offense. So Dalton Schultz has a huge ceiling going into this upcoming season. I think he's absolutely worth the risk. And even on the low end of receiving production, if he has a season like he did last year, it's still a pretty solid season. One of the upper echelon level tight ends when it comes to fantasy. I think Schultz is going to see a lot of offensive snaps. He's going to see plenty of targets this upcoming season. So Dalton Schultz, tight end, you should be putting on your roster, honestly. So thank you so much for watching the video. Of course, feel free to stick around and watch some more content. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and of course, get the bell on to know every single time I'm dropping a video. My name is Tristan Blake Rines. I'm going to catch you in the next one. Adios.